Support for Faith on Trial and Iowa Catholic Radio provided in part by Imogene Ingredients.
Our freedom of conscience and religion is being challenged by laws and regulations imposed by secular society. It's time to hear from the top Christian litigators in the nation who have come forward to tell us the truth and help us defend our faith.
Hear ye, hear ye. All rise. Faith on Trial with Defender of the Faith, Deacon Mike Mano, is in session.
And welcome back to Faith on Trial. I'm Deacon Mike Manno, your host, here with Gina Noel in the studio in beautiful downtown West Des Moines. Actually, we're not in downtown West Des Moines.
We're in Iowa.
In Iowa, downtown Iowa, whatever. We are here, and all the politicians have left now, and it's kind of a lonely place. And the cold
weather has left. Is there a correlation, Deacon Mike?
That's right. Yeah. All right.
And we've got a couple of elections now under a caucus and an election.
We got a caucus under the belt, and now there's been the primary election, and
right.
I guess the next big one is in South Carolina in about another 3 weeks. So we will see how that all plays out.
And I noticed that one of our favorite political organizations, CatholicVote.org, has endorsed
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump, yes. So
not a surprise.
I did listen to the Loopcast, and I read their justification of it, and I 100% agree.
Yeah.
We need to do what's right for the people of this great nation. So.
We do. And of course, we don't make any public endorsements here, but I think...
No, but I personally agree with their justification of that endorsement.
I think so, too. I mean, we are in a situation where the other side is promising a lot of things that are...
destructive to people of faith.
Destructive, immoral.
Yes.
Sinful.
Exactly. So we'll have to watch how that all plays out.
And of course, Donald Trump is not a perfect person, but we have seen what he has done.
That is exactly what CatholicVote.org said. Encapsulated. Yes, very well.
We've seen what he's done, and of course, none of all of what he has done before belies what they're claiming that he's going to do. The other side is claiming that he's going to become a dictator and he's going to do this and he's going to do that. When we had all those riots in 2020, he let the states take care of that. He didn't step in with martial law or anything like that. If there was a time for somebody who wanted to be a dictator to do something, that would have been it. But he sat back and he believed in federalism and let the local authorities handle that, which in most cases they botched, but that's another another thing.
That's the problem of the people that put them in office.
We will see.
What is it? You get the government you deserve?
Yeah,
is that
you
how
get the government that you deserve.
Yeah.
All right, today on Faith on Trial, we have Lori Morgan, who is the Chief of Staff for an organization called Do No Harm. And what Do No Harm is trying to do is to protect health care from what it calls the disastrous consequences of identity politics. Be interesting to see what Lori's going to say.
Well, and there's a variety of angles she could take on this discussion, so I'll be real curious to see how we approach it today.
Yeah. And then we have Ryan Gardner, who is a legal counsel with First Liberty, and he's going to talk to us about a church they are representing that has what appears to be some type of shelter program in place where the city is now getting on them and saying they cannot be open 24 hours a day, which is what the shelter does, takes in people.
Exactly, and it's definitely a case that shows an animus towards people of faith.
Sure does.
And the good that they do.
And this is not the only case like this that's going on right now. There are others. So we'll talk to Ryan about that and see where we're at. Yeah,
that's what this show's about. We'll bring them to you one at a time. 1 week at a time.
That's right.
That's right.
Our prayer for peace. Do we have our prayer for peace?
I do. Morning? I have a prayer for peace this morning. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. God of peace, bring your peace to our violent world. Peace in the hearts of all men and women, and peace among the nations of this earth. Turn your way of love to those whose hearts and minds are consumed with hatred, and strengthen us all in hope. Give us the wisdom and courage to work tirelessly for a world where true peace and love reign among the nations and in the hearts of all. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Gina. And we're going to take a short break right now. When we come back, we're going to have Lori Morgan, who is the Chief of Staff for Do No Harm. Stay tuned. This is Faith on Trial on the Iowa Catholic Radio Network. And welcome back. You're still listening to Faith on Trial on the Iowa Catholic Radio Network. And we have with us right now Laura Morgan, who is Chief of Staff at an organization called Do No Harm, which apparently comes from the oath that doctors take to first do no harm. So what is this organization all about, and why are you taking words out of the Hippocratic Oath to name yourself?
Well, good morning, Deacon Mike and Gina. It's great to join you today, and I'm happy to come on and talk about Do No Harm, because we're a diverse group of physicians, healthcare professionals, students, patients, policymakers. We're all here to have a united front in our ethical and moral mission to protect healthcare from a radical, divisive, and discriminatory ideology, because healthcare needs to be the best for everyone, not undermining it in pursuit of a political agenda.
Now, I noticed that a lot of, and I've checked out your website, and I noticed a lot of the legal cases and disputes that you're involved in deal with DEI and the effort to make healthcare more equitable. But it seems like that's an oxymoron at this point. You either make a healthcare effective or not, but more equitable to people. That indicates maybe some type of rationing of health care to some people. I don't know. You can take that whichever way you want to go with it.
Indeed. The concept of diversity, equity, and inclusion, it sounds great, and everybody wants diversity, and everybody wants to be included, but where the problem comes in is when you're talking about equity, because that's not the same thing as equality. Everyone deserves equal access to health care, and they deserve to be treated as individuals according to their needs, not as members of groups that are separated according to identity and immutable characteristics. So in healthcare, equity is not an attainable goal, because that means that everyone has the same outcome. And it's just not possible in healthcare for the two of us, if we have a similar medical condition, for us to have the same outcome. And so Do No Harm is working to lead with empathy. We're focused on protecting healthcare from these divisive ideologies. And the DEI concept does include some other dangerous things, such as anti-racism and implicit bias. And those things are bad for medicine because they're discriminatory and divisive.
Now, it seems to me, and this is how I heard of you people, because I had not known that your organization existed before a week or so ago. There was a chief diversity officer at Johns Hopkins Hospital made a statement about equity in the medical profession and in medical delivery, which seems to have set a lot of people's hair on fire. How did you react to that?
Yes, well, Dr. Sharita Golden, she's the Chief Diversity Officer for the Office of Diversity, Inclusion, and Health Equity at the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. And she did put out an email in her January issue of her monthly Diversity Digest. And what was most problematic about it was that she had a long comment about privilege. And she listed groups of people that she defined to have privilege, which included white people, heterosexuals, males, Christians, and middle-aged
I'm checking a lot of
people
boxes there,
among
so I'm feeling pretty privileged as you're talking.
Or you're wondering, what
Exactly.
privilege is it exactly?
Yeah, what privilege
that
is it? Yeah.
that I've acquired?
I was snowing 4 feet of shoveling 4 feet of snow the other day. I don't know what kind of privilege I have for that, but go ahead.
Right, and snow shoveling wasn't on her list, but if it includes it being done by anyone else that hit her privilege list, she was saying that these are people who have advantages over other people. And this is a common concept within DEI. They separate people into groups that are labeled as oppressed and then the oppressors. And this list that she had in her email are lists of groups of people that she determines to be oppressors. And this is not anything that is of any value to taking care of patients and their medical issues, and it's extremely inflammatory and divisive. So we did respond by having a billboard truck that drove through Washington, D.C. on January 18th and past the Johns Hopkins Hospital on January 19th. And we said that racism is still racism, even when a DEI officer says it. And it's true that medical students need to be taught about how to be good doctors, not about taking on social justice issues. They don't do anything to help them to become competent clinicians.
Yeah, and that was my question. How DEI would increase or be beneficial to medical care. I can only imagine being a doctor and somebody's brought in before me with an illness that whatever that guy's got, I've got to find out what it is and find a way to treat it. Doesn't matter whether he's white or he's black or he's Jew or he's Christian or whatever he is. My job, just like my job when I was an attorney, was to defend people. It didn't matter whether they were black or white or whatever. You defended them. That was part of the system. And I would think that in medicine, it works the same way. The patient before you is your main concern.
It's true. And what many organizations and even state boards of medicine and nursing and other healthcare facilities are doing is they're requiring their staff to take courses in implicit bias or unconscious bias, which is a concept that says you have biases against people that you can't help. They're built in. You can't do anything about it, but that you need to check your biases every time you encounter someone. And I was actually someone who was greatly affected by such mandates to take implicit bias training. And I was fired after, at the time, 39 years of nursing because I refused to agree with that concept that I need to check my biases at the moment of decision-making so that I don't hurt someone. And like your example of being an attorney, my background is in emergency room nursing. And if you presented to me with a gunshot wound, the point of decision-making for me is what I need to do to help save your life, not what color is your skin and how might I be biased against you. So that's really how it becomes a divisive and dangerous thing in healthcare.
Yeah.
I have to share an experience that I heard recently from someone whose wife was about to have back surgery, and I can tell you that she came out of the surgery just great. But this person relayed the story to me and said, the thing that makes me the most nervous, there are all kinds of consequences of having surgery, there are complications. But they wondered who in the room was the diversity hire, and that his wife was under the most danger of having something go wrong. What an unusual concept we've developed in this society when that becomes one of our worries in the hands of our medical professionals.
Yeah, that opens up a whole new line here, Laura, is the hiring and promotion of people within the medical community, especially into spots in medical schools, that are based on diversity and not based on ability.
You're correct. And that's why Do No Harm works to expose those things. We've taken legal action against entities that do say that, okay, you can either be hired by this company and receive a substantial sign-on bonus, but only if you're Black. Or you can come take this course to learn to become an emergency medical technician, but only if you meet certain racial criteria. And when we start putting those sorts of priorities on hiring and promotion and education, then it really sows a lot of seeds of distrust between healthcare providers and their patients. And that is something that is very damaging to the physician-patient relationship, the nurse-patient relationship, because they're inherently built on trust. And we need to be able to have our patients have trust in us that we are there in our position because we deserve to be there.
Yeah, the rule of thumb here should be meritocracy.
The process.
Yeah, not the color of your skin or everything, and that's what it's turning away from. Let's talk about, you said you filed suit. Let's talk about some of the things that your organization does. If somebody has a problem and they come to you, first of all, how do they come to you? How do they get a hold of your organization and can follow up on what you're doing?
The best way to find out what we're doing is go to donoharmmedicine.org and look at our newsroom tab, because that's where we put all the latest and greatest of the work that we're doing. We have a blog in there. We put our media mentions in there. It's a really great way to get an overview of our work. And we do have people who contact us through our Share Your Concern tab, which on the homepage of donoharmmedicine.org, there's a button, and people contact us with some details about the situation they want us to look into. They can remain anonymous, or we have helped people go public with their story. And that's what Do No Harm did for me. I was a client and member of Do No Harm before I became an employee, and it really helped to put some national attention on my situation, that there are seasoned healthcare providers who are being fired because they don't go along with ideology.
Yeah, we see this all over. Our program has covered a lot of those stories. So let's talk about the legal aspects here. Sometimes when somebody gets into a situation like that, they need some legal help. Do you help provide legal assistance or channel them in in another direction where they can get that assistance?
It really does depend on the situation, but we do have a legal team that, in cases where we need an opinion or review, we can do that. There's some cases that it really takes just exposing what's going on to the public, and things can change. But at other times, then when legal action is the way forward, then we are able to assist people with finding the correct resource for that. But public pressure can go a long way, and we were actually able to do that in the state of Kentucky recently with their mandated implicit bias training for nurses as a condition for licensure, and just the public pressure and the PR behind all of that got the Kentucky Board of Nursing to back down, and they're not upholding that mandate at this time.
Okay. Yeah, I think I saw something on your website about you had a case that you had voluntarily dismissed after an agreement, and that's usually what happens. I know with a lot of the large pro bono legal organizations that stand up for religious liberty and things like that, a lot of times all they need to do is write a letter and the other side may tend to back down, or a lot of them do. They don't go any further than that. So I'm glad you're taking that attitude. All right, who started Do No Harm, and how is it structured now?
Dr. Stanley Goldfarb is our founder and chairman, and he was with the University of Pennsylvania, the Perelman School of Medicine, as a professor of medicine. And, during that time, he did research, he published articles, and did a lot of great work but he began to see how things were creeping into the medical curriculum that didn't have anything to do with training doctors and had everything to do with creating activists for radical ideologies that don't belong in medicine. So he founded Do No Harm to help push back on that. And our launch was in April of 2022. And it's really just been a meteoric growth, and we serve over 6,100 members now, and things just continue to grow for us.
You talk about members. I take it there's if somebody wants to join, they can do that, and I take it then contribute financially to the cause?
Correct. If people go to donoharmmedicine.org, they'll also see a button that says Become a Member. Okay. And I like to tease people a little bit and tell them that we'll accept you as a member, and you can contribute anywhere from $0 to $2 million. But we are a nonprofit organization, and we are a member-driven organization. And we like our members to tell us who they are, too. Are they a physician or a policymaker or just a concerned citizen or patient? Yeah. And, to let us know where they live. We ask them to tell us your story. And this is where we get a lot of good information from our members about what's going on in their profession or in their areas. And so we are at about the 6,100 mark for the number of members we have. And it's very big variety as to who they are.
Oh, yeah.
But they all contribute to us.
Yeah. Let me turn your attention to something that's just kind of come up in the last couple of days. The World Health Organization is now indicating that there may be another pandemic coming. It's going to be worse than the one we had. And they want to have a new covenant or a new treaty with all the nations about how people are going to handle that. And one of the things is that in this treaty or this whatever they call it, this agreement with all the nations, is that there will be equity in health care. What do you say to that?
Unfortunately, the World Health Organization is one of those traditional legacy organizations that they've really lost their way beginning in the summer of 2020, which is where all the health equity stuff really springboarded during that time because, in the United States, there was a lot of things going on between the pandemic and then a lot of social issues that got a great bit of attention. And so health equity came into many more organizations than just the WHO. And that concept is just not something that is really realistic or even aligned with sound medical education.
One final question before we have to let you go, and that has to do with public seminars or public gatherings that you might be hosting. If you do host any, do you have like things on the on your plans to put together a seminar someplace, maybe that would be accessible by internet?
We have done that before, and
Okay.
we've also partnered with other organizations to do so. That's something that we're this year being able to ramp up a little more. But visitors to our website can click on our events page and see where we have been and what those events have been about. But we also, on that page, have a request form if they would like someone from Do No Harm to speak to their group, or maybe they have a group that does meet virtually and they would like us to join them. And we welcome people to fill out that form, submit to us, and we'll get back to them about that.
So it's donoharmmedicine.org is the website, and you certainly take donations there, and I would encourage anybody who has a few spare cents in their pocket in this economy, if they have anything left over, that this might be an organization you might want to look at. And I hope you would check it out and follow it and see what is going on, because if you've been listening to this program for any length of time, you know that we have very serious concerns about DEI and what it means. And when you get into the medical profession and you're talking about trying to enforce equity in the medical profession, it means they're not, I think anyway, not practicing medicine the way it's supposed to be practiced. But anyway, Laura, I want to thank you for joining us today. We certainly appreciate it. And hopefully you'll hear from some of our listeners, and they'll sign up for your newsletter.
That's very well said, Deacon Mike. I really appreciate that, and we do hope to hear from your audience.
Very good. Thank you very much, Laura Morgan, who is the Chief of Staff at Do No Harm. And Gene and I will be right back after these messages. You're listening to Faith on Trial on the Iowa Catholic Radio Network. And we are back. You're still listening to Faith on Trial on the Iowa Catholic Radio Network. And we have with us right now Ryan Gardner, who is a legal counsel with First Liberty, one of our favorite, Gina, right? One of our favorite places to talk to. They do good work, right? And Ryan is representing a church called Dad's Place, and it's in Byron. Is that right? Byron, Ohio?
Bryan, Ohio.
Bryan, Ohio. And it's you were telling us before we went on the air, it's the home of the Dum Dum. Is that it? The Dum Dum lollipops? Is that what they make there?
It is. It is indeed Dum Dum lollipops and Etch-a-Sketch.
Etch-a-Sketch. Their claims to fame. All right, tell us about the Dad's Place Church. What does it do that caught the ire of the city?
Absolutely. So we represent Dad's Place and its pastor, Christopher Ravel. And Dad's Place, back in March of last year, made the decision that it wanted to transition to a 24-hour ministry. They wanted the church doors to always be open to anyone in the community who might want to come in for whatever reason. And so that's what they did. And as a byproduct of that, as you can imagine, and especially during bad weather times, people who are homeless and have nowhere else to go have been staying in the church overnight. Now, this has been happening even before they opened their church doors 24 hours a day. They already were opening it up on an emergency basis when they encountered extreme in the area. But this has now been an expansion. The view is that whoever walks through their door is part of their family, is part of their church, and they want to show these people that they are loved and valued and cared for in both meeting their spiritual and their physical needs. And so that the ministry has sort of grown into this larger act of service for the community. And part of it, frankly, was based on the fact that there's a severe housing crisis happening in Bryan. So Pastor Chris saw a need and is trying to help fill that for people who have nowhere else to go, people who perhaps have been turned away by the homeless shelter that is, funny enough, right next door to them. And for a while, the city seemed supportive of this because for the years that Dad's Place has been there, they would bring people to the church knowing that this is one of the church's ministries. And in fact, they did this after the church began operating its 24-hour ministry until November of last year. In November, the church received a cease and desist letter from the city telling them that they had 10 days to shut their doors and get everybody in that church out, or the pastor was going to face criminal charges. Now, Pastor Chris has a deep love for his community. He has a deep love for those that he serves. And so he couldn't do that. These people have no one else, and they have nowhere else to go. And so he couldn't just put them out in the cold. And so he refused to comply with the city's orders. And as a result of that, he is now facing 18 criminal charges for violating the city's zoning law.
Now, I have to stop you right there and ask a question. First of all, this sounds like just a basic traditional Christian ministry and obligation to help those less fortunate, okay? And they also seem to be located next to what is a homeless shelter that I guess is full. So what is the basis of the city's complaint? I could understand if they were saying this is in the middle of some type of residential area, but apparently it has similar facilities like that around it. And it seems to me, and again, I'm not as schooled as a lawyer as you are in these matters, but it seems to me that you got the Religious Freedom Restoration Act that prevents using zoning to curb religious activity. Or maybe I'm wrong.
You're absolutely right.
Okay.
What the city has done here is they have criminalized the church's conduct for doing church things that are grained into the DNA of the Christian faith. And part of what's driving this, it's not really clear to me. I mean, the church is located in the downtown area, so maybe part of this is the city doesn't want churches in its downtown area. I know that the Chamber of Commerce has, at one point back in 2020, when there were some other zoning issues involving another church in this area, has said basically that they didn't want churches down there. They wanted it strictly for retail. So I don't know if the city is just doing the bidding of the Chamber of Commerce or if someone else is pushing it. But it's clear that the city views the people as being the problem here. If you read the criminal complaint, the big issues, the big criminal conduct that's taking place here is people eating, doing laundry, and sleeping in the church building. Eating, laundry, sleeping. Those are the big criminal issues here. And you're absolutely right that this is a violation of the church's First Amendment rights and its rights under the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act, which, as you stated, goes right to the heart of forbidding this kind of use of the zoning laws to discriminate against churches.
Okay, now you filed suit in federal court, is that right, in Toledo?
That is correct. We filed suit on Monday against the city and the mayor, the police captain, and the fire chief.
All right, so this is a brand new baby lawsuit. If it's just birthed on Monday. What are you asking for in this suit?
We are asking for the court to stop the city from continuing to harass and intimidate this church, who is just wanting to help the most vulnerable in the city of Bryan.
Well, let me extend this a little bit further. What is it that the city should be doing for these folks that it's not doing that the church is picking up?
Well, a great place to start would be dropping all criminal charges against the pastor for doing a public service.
Right.
But beyond that, the city officials are harassing them over and over again. They're using their fire code as another means of trying to shut this church down and drive it out of the square. And that's really what we're trying to stop. The city has made clear that its goal is to stop this ministry. But churches have a right to do this. Churches have a right to engage in their religious beliefs.
They have an obligation to do this.
Yeah.
This is what we Christians are for, okay?
Yeah. And my question is, if the church doesn't step in to help these people, who's going to do it? as I mentioned, there is a homeless shelter next door to the sanctuary. It's another great Christian ministry in the city of Bryan. But they only have so many beds.
Right.
And when those beds fill up, what are those people supposed to do?
Are they that shelter, is that under any attack from the city like the church is?
Not right now, but in 2020 there actually was an issue, and we walked through this in the lawsuit that we filed. But back in 2020, that's when a lot of the hostility towards churches in downtown started. The city made a very obvious effort to push religious organizations out of the square. So they had, up until 2020, the city had provided police support to the sanctuary to help deal with any people who came to the sanctuary who, for whatever reason, were unruly or otherwise causing issues and needed to be removed from the property. But they suddenly decided that they weren't going to do that anymore. And so they wanted to try to force the sanctuary to go through basically landlord-tenant eviction proceedings, which would, of course, hinder the ministry, because if you have to go to court every time you have someone show up at your door who's causing problems, you can't really function. And so they did that. And at the same time, they also drove another church, the Revival Hub, from operating that area based on the same zoning code. And they tried to do the same Dad's Place, frankly, in 2020 because the zoning law. And as a result of that, funny enough, Dad's Place is currently not able to use half of its building because of the city zoning code. They made the church apply for a conditional use permit, and as a result of that, they said, well, you could use the back half of your property, which there's two addresses in. They used to be two separate buildings, but the firewall came down years before the church even got in there. They said, you can use the back half for church and ministry activities, but the front half has to be retail. And so they basically forced the church to operate a sort of retail establishment out of half of its building against its will.
Conditional use permit, wouldn't that violate the federal law?
Oh, and that's part of this lawsuit is the fact that the city is trying to dictate how a church uses its own property
through zoning.
It's extremely problematic.
Which is specifically, I think, called out in the law.
You are absolutely right.
All right. So I guess you're asking for some type of an injunction here.
That's exactly right. We initially went in seeking a temporary restraining order, which is basically an emergency order to stop the city, because the city had promised to take action against our client to try to shut down the church last Tuesday, so the 23rd. And so we filed our lawsuit on Monday. We had a status conference with the court on Tuesday, and as a result of that conference now, the court has gotten the parties to agree to maintain the status quo for now until we have a hearing in March to fully litigate our request for an injunction. So for now, Dad's Place is able to stay open, is able to continue serving its community and helping those who need it most.
Yeah. Go ahead, Gina. Do you have something?
Oh, I do. I have so many questions. Ryan, let's start with this.
Now's the time to
Tell
ask.
me a little bit about, you describe Bryan, Ohio as the town of Etch-a-Sketch and Dum-Dum. So to me, that paints an idyllic all-American town. Tell me a little bit about Bryan. How big is it? What part of the world is it in? Give me an idea of what kind of culture is in this community.
So Bryan is very much small town USA, located in northwest Ohio. It's got a population of a little over 8,000 people, and it really does have a beautiful downtown area. There's a beautiful courthouse that is the centerpiece of this downtown square, surrounded by all kinds of businesses. And the church is located in an ideal place for its ministry, just basically off that main square block. It's right next to a community clinic. I believe that the pastor told me it's the only Medicaid dentist that is in town, so the type of people that might be going to those types of places are the type of people that the church might be able to minister to. And like I said, it's right next door to the homeless shelter. And funny enough, it's right across the street from another nonprofit organization that helps victims of domestic violence called Sarah's Friends.
So that leads me to my next question, which was, I'm trying to figure out where the cease and desist, what the origin of this might have been. Where do you think the people of the community, and it doesn't sound like it could happen this way, but it was the fact that this church was offering these services, drawing the population, bringing in people from outside of Bryan and filling the streets with more homeless?
I think it was getting them off the streets. That's the whole point. Is they don't want these people on the streets. They want them somewhere safe. And the church's whole idea is they want to bring people in and then send them back out. The pastor has used the three words to describe his ministry as save, sharpen, and send. And that's what he wants to do. He wants to come in and meet these people's spiritual needs, meet their physical needs. He wants to sharpen them up, help them have a community, help them if they need help with life skills or need help with getting into sport, help them do that, and then send them back out in the community as more productive members of society. That is the church's whole idea and its whole model and what they want to do.
That's exactly what we would expect from a Christian community. So I'm glad to hear that. Another question that came to mind is there's all of these cases against the pastor, but what are the penalties for these charges? What is he facing? Jail time? How do they want to prosecute
each charge
it?
Carries a fine of I believe it's $100 to $500, somewhere in that range, and also potential jail time of up to 6 months or possibly both.
Wow.
Depending on how aggressive the city wants to be. I mean, you could look at thousands of dollars in fines. You could be looking at years in jail, depending on, they've brought 18 charges and have in the past expressed that they intended to carry out more because the city's view is that each day the church is open constitutes another criminal misdemeanor.
Yeah, they boxcar enough of those things
now
together and they can bankrupt the church.
Yeah, that's the idea.
And has the church had much community support and pushback from the voters and constituents of the city council and mayor?
From what I'm hearing, it's not just the city of Bryan, Ohio, but the entire country is rallying around this church right now.
That's very good work.
That's very encouraging to hear. And Pastor Chris has great relationships with everybody in his community. As I said, he loves the city of Bryan. He works regularly with I mentioned the homeless shelter next door. He does a lot of work for them. The two of them work in conjunction to help meet this need. And beyond that, he tries to have great relationships with all the businesses that are close to him. And they just want to be a good member of society. I mean, this is the kind of church where every Saturday, part of what they do is it's like, I believe it's called Good Neighbor Saturday or something to that effect, where they just go outside and basically pick up the trash around them, pick up, anything that to make sure that their corner of the city is looking pristine.
Yeah, that's good. That's it. All right, the next question then is how do we follow this, and how can any of our listeners help you with this?
Absolutely. So if you want to hear more about this case and watch that development, you can always go to firstliberty.org to do so. And
if people want to contribute?
And that as well, yeah. And if you feel so called to give and support the important work that First Liberty is doing, not only for Pastor Chris, but for so many other ministries and people of faith around the country, you can always donate as well at firstliberty.org.
And we know First Liberty very well. We've had First Liberty on this program during the past 10 years. We've had them on dozens and dozens and dozens of times talking about similar cases. And it's important that these organizations like First Liberty are able to do what they do because you do what you do pro bono to the church, correct?
Absolutely.
This all comes from other people, and these things cost. I mean, lawsuits cost, lawyers cost. You got to hire them. You got to pay them something. And the same way, when you get into court, there's all sorts of costs involved with legal fees and court costs and investigation costs that go on and on and on. And if the client isn't paying for it, and a lot of these situations like this particular church, I'm sure you've got a client here that could not possibly afford a good legal representation if it was not for organizations like First Liberty that steps forward and says, we'll take the case, we'll do it for you pro bono.
Absolutely. We do what we do so that churches around the country can do what they do.
That's a great way to summarize what you do, and it's a great way to leave us here now. And we are out of time, so we're going to have to go. But Rod, wanted to thank you very much for joining us today, and we wish you well in what you're doing. God bless you in your work. And that's firstliberty.org. Anybody want to follow it?
Thanks. Same deal.
Certainly. Thank you, Ryan. And we will be right back after these messages. You're listening to Faith on Trial on the Iowa Catholic Radio Network. And we're back. You're still listening to Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio. Gina, interesting program again today, and especially talking, and not only to Ryan from First Liberty, but Laura from Do No Harm.
That's right, a new organization for our programming, and I just love Laura's story about how we have used DEI to eliminate some of the very great healthcare workers in our country.
Yeah, and we've seen that. We've carried those stories before, and to hear her particular story was very interesting too.
And I love how she's used her experience to help others in that same situation to defend themselves and protect their jobs. Right.
And then Ryan from First Liberty talking about the, Dad's Place Church.
Yeah.
That's... Unfortunately, we see this over and over again. I mean, we've been on the air over 10 years, and we've had dozens and dozens and dozens of cases just like this, where local authorities are trying to shut down a church or a charity or something for whatever reason it is. The only thing I can think of is this is religious animus in some places.
And I think that during COVID, the shutting down of the churches really emboldened people who are very anti-religion or anti-religious. And, you talk about the contrast. The casinos were opened and the churches were closed in the very same communities. So it visualizes that animus.
Yeah.
What to me is astonishing is that this community is so very small and that they're attacking their own with the law and using their power as elected officials to really hurt the people of their community in a lot of ways, and feel as if even after their First Liberty came in and told them what you're doing is against our Constitution, they're like, yeah, see you in court.
And it's specifically against the law.
No, exactly. I can't see that.
You cannot use zoning ordinances to rid yourself of a church.
Sure. We didn't talk about all the precedences that First Liberty has behind them in this case, but I can't imagine that the government of Bryan, Ohio will win this case.
Yeah, I can't either, but you never know. I mean, this is in front of one judge right now. I'd feel a little bit safer if it was in front of a panel, an appeals panel or something, because they tend to sort these things out a little bit better sometimes than an individual judge. But I don't think the city has much of a case there. But we will see what happens.
And then using their taxpayers' dollars to litigate this instead of helping the people from the community that this church is out there to help.
You wanted to mention something about a Catholic Mass in the Capitol.
Well, they've had masses in the U.S. Capitol before.
This one was different.
But this week, they held a Latin Mass. And, I didn't look it up ahead of time because I don't know who the priest was that began to work with the Congress to be able to do this. But I thought of you as our Latin Mass deacon here in the Des Moines Diocese, or our Des Moines community. And wouldn't it have been fun to have been there to celebrate a Mass on the state's capital, or the United States Capitol?
Yeah, either Latin or English Mass. It doesn't matter. Just having the Mass there within the Capitol. Maybe
we need more of that.
I was going to say maybe they need to exercise the Capitol too, with what goes on there sometimes. But anyway, that was I did see that, and that is kind of an interesting story.
Yeah.
But we are out of time, it looks like, so let's end with our Defender's Prayer. St. Michael the Archangel, Defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, thrust into hell Satan and all the evil spirits that prowl about the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. And remember now, our Sunday afternoon program has been moved to 6 o'clock, so we're on 2 on Saturday and 6 then in the evening on Sunday rather than 9 o'clock. And remember, we did make that change in our program schedule. I don't think there's been other changes that we've made recently that affect us, Gina.
No,
I think that's it. I think that's it. All right. So until next time, have a blessed and peaceful week. Go to church this weekend, and don't forget to take your kids. God bless you.
Our freedom of conscience and religion is being challenged by laws and regulations imposed by secular society. Faith on Trial with Defender of the Faith, Deacon Mike Mano. Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio, iowacatholicradio.com, and the Iowa Catholic Radio app.
Support for Faith on Trial and Iowa Catholic Radio provided in part by Imogene Ingredients.